Hey everyone, welcome back to another recap podcast from SNXweave, where we give quick weekly recaps of news and important updates from the previous week from the Spartan Council and core contributors, as well as discuss what the Grants Council and ambassadors are up to, so let's get started. In case you missed it, the SNX inflationary distribution ratio has been increased in favor of optimism stakers. Thanks to SCCP 189, the ratio is now 40% optimism and 60% Ethereum mainnet. This SCCP ultimately aims to further incentivize minters to migrate to L2. SIPs 198 and 222 to update the atomic exchange function and exchange fee system respectively are both currently in testing. The council said an edge case was identified, so some tweaks were needed. These SIPs will need to be presented again to reflect the changes, meaning they have been delayed a bit. Next, the Optimism Bridge is in its final stage of testing. It's already on Kovan, and a secondary release will be done to fix any inputs from the audit. The hope is to have this SIP on mainnet this week. The Upgraded Liquidation Mechanism SIP is currently in audit and is scheduled to be done by the 16th. While it's very possible that it could be out earlier than that, the SIP will also need to go through some testing to identify possible edge cases before being released. As for the oil and Ukrainian hryvnia synths, they have not met all of the criteria that Chainlink has set for feed approval. Chainlink is working on it, however, but there is no set timeline for now. The council also discussed SIP 218 to move the Curve SUSD pool reward to Metapool. They decided it might not actually make financial sense, but Caleb said he would coordinate with gunboats to decide if the incentives should be discontinued, since they aren't enough to make any material difference on-chain anyways. It's likely that this SIP will be rejected and possibly replaced at a later time. Next up, the ApeCoin and DYDX perp SIPs are both pretty much ready to go. These will most likely go out on the next release, hopefully this week, so keep an eye out for these additional perpetual futures markets. On the V3 side of things, part of the team had an in-person off-site in New York recently and were able to get a bunch of SIPs written. They decided it would be best to now start walking through some V3 concepts to give the community time to digest and ask questions. Afif, Noah, and DB gave an overview of some of these V3 concepts, so let's summarize them. First was the idea of a differentiated debt pool. In V2X, you stake, you get SUSD, and then you're immediately exposed to every asset in the debt pool. Afif said that in V3, the proposal is that every new synth or trading product will exist as its own market, and debt gets passed to any user who is staked in that market. In the V3 staking model, users would be able to decide which synths or products they want to stake into, which creates a much more flexible infrastructure. They also discussed the idea of staking accounts, which will introduce the concept of an NFT representing the account. Noah said this will allow for positions to be transferred from one wallet to another without having to exit and re-enter, and governance will vote on which types of collateral are let into the system. Next up was funds. The primary UX will be the ability to stake into the Spartan Council Fund, collateral voted on by governance. Collateral can be split across different funds, for example 50% to the Spartan Council Fund and 50% allocated to something else. And each fund would have its own C ratio. And lastly, markets. The market manager will allow users to register their market contracts, which is what the individual market implementation would interact with to determine what liquidity has been provided. Noah said the big objective is to make the architecture more permissionless and silo risk. Risk of a particular fund is only assumed by those participating in the fund. In Grants Council updates, Spreak has provided some feedback on the initial wrapper UI designs. The team is currently looking for a developer to help build the product and will be putting out a request for proposals soon. They're also looking for some community guidance from those who better technically understand the wrapper function to ensure that the front end covers everything. So please reach out to them in the Grants Council channel if this is something you can help with. As for the hero stats page, the developer has implemented the baseline stats framework, and the next step is to do the actual integration and add some other UI features. The descriptions for the tool site are also currently in progress, and Big Penny is working closely with the community volunteer to get these done quickly. Lastly, The Grants Council has decided who the first 300 lieutenant will be. This individual will help lead and organize the 300 group, as well as greater synthetics community involvement. And as this role grows, each additional lieutenant will have their own set of responsibilities that they will be measured by. Stay tuned this week for an official announcement where the name of the first 300 lieutenant is revealed. In Ambassador Council updates, the Key Performance Indicator report is in for April. As a reminder, this new KPI system came from a SIP that Millie wrote to give the ambassadors more structure in their role. The team plans to do monthly summaries of their KPIs, which will each be included in the SNXweave weekly recap in order to maintain accountability. Be sure to check out the full list of KPIs in our blog. The ambassadors also hosted a Spartan Spaces event last week with members of 4 different DeFi protocol grants teams. Synthetics, represented by Mike, Lyra, represented by Cody, DYDX, represented by Matt, and Perpetual Protocol, represented by Max. When asked about their respective grant missions, Max explained that much of the Perp grants resources have actually been directed towards helping making the transition to Optimism. Since their grants program was only created this past August, that has been their main focus in this initial stage. They currently have 8 members on the grants team, some of whom are core contributors, community members, or large stakeholders. Max said this diversity really allows them to represent a bird's eye view of the DeFi derivative landscape. Next, Cody said Lyra Grants aims to complement the bright ideas that come out of the community. He added that they try to approach everything with an open mind and support the community in whatever direction they wish to go. The Lyra Grants team is elected through a community token vote, with nominees ranging from investors to traders to community members. Part of the criteria, however, is activity within the Discord community. Cody also detailed some of their current initiatives, including the Lyra Shortput, which is a community-led newsletter with plans to expand to more educational content. He also boasted the GDAO's ability to validate and support Lyra's large and vibrant non-English speaking communities through grants and retroactive funding. Matt then explained the mission of DYDX grants, saying his view of the program is that it creates a relatively low-cost way to accelerate growth and empower the community to work on different tasks. He hopes to be able to support the creation and development of a self-sufficient program in the long term. They also have a very diverse group of people on the grants team, including liquidity providers, longtime users, and investors. Matt added that DYDX grants tries to think on a global scale, so they funded a number of non-technical grants such as translation projects to further education and adoption. For synthetics, Mike said the Grants Council aims to deploy funds in a way that best serves the community. In addition to the direct synthetics community contribution, he explained how they have also done significant work for the broader Optimism and Ethereum ecosystem. As we all probably know, the Grants Council consists of 5 self-nominated members who are elected through a community token vote and serve for 3-month epics. Mike discussed 2 initiatives that he thinks have been big wins for synthetics grants: SNXweave and retroactive public goods grants. Thanks for the shout out, Mike. During the Spartan Space, the group also discussed topics such as long-term financial viability of grants funding, recurring projects, varying degrees of impact of specific grants, and much more. So be sure to check out the recording for the full conversation. And that's it for today's updates. Be sure to check out our weekly recap blog post, share this podcast link, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear more about from SNXweave. Thanks for listening.